You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Erica Campbell, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's talk about this. What, more than pretty, doing the soul work that uncovers your true beauty. First of all, what's that about? In terms of
it's about
more than pretty, like what is that?
Yes. It is knowing that you're more than your exterior. I think we are very visual in this time in our culture, which is not a bad thing if you understand that your pretty has power. And you don't know that if you have not kind of combed over your life and asked yourself why and have some real understanding of who you are and why you are the way you are. You know, sometimes we hide who we are behind lipstick and hair and wigs. Y'all know I change my hair all the time, but I'm very comfortable being me with or without all the glam and stuff, and it's taken some work. And so I just want to share that, give some tools on how we can be free, like really look at ourselves and like who we see in the mirror and feel good about it.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I was having a conversation. I was on a movie junket, and I was having a conversation with the guy, and he said that he took Instagram off of his phone. And I said, why? He said, because even though he's gone on nice vacations, he just felt like his life was so immaterial based upon the people who he followed. And I said, wait a minute, hold up. I said, you seriously? I said, was bothered and in a funk because you were seeing the vacations of other people? I said, that makes no sense whatsoever. And it was amazing because he said how he just could not get over or reconcile what he was seeing with his life. And I was like, wow, allowing that to impact you. No kidding.
Wow, it is crazy. There are statistics that show that depression is on the rise, and social media has everything to do with it because we're constantly thinking our birthday parties aren't like somebody else. I mean, it's hard if you follow the Kim Kardashians of the world and you see these parties that look like Disneyland and then you got a balloon and a cake, then you don't want to post it and you feel bad about what you can do. I remember a cake and a balloon was fine for me growing up, but now we have this comparison, and I think it is all in an effort to bring us down, low self-esteem and poor self-image. image and always trying to be like the Joneses, trying to look like the next person, be better than the next person. I can't post my relationship because my husband ain't as fine as hers, or my car isn't as fancy as theirs. It's just absurd, and all it's doing is robbing you from living a life that you really enjoy. And listen, I'm an entertainer, but I am such the regular person, and I'm okay with that.
Right. I mean, look, I tell people all the time. I mean, I've got friends, I've got fraternity brothers, I've got colleagues. They've got private planes. You know what? God bless them.
Yeah.
God bless them. And guess what? And I've actually flown on some of the private planes, and I appreciate it. But you know what? When I hop my butt on Southwest or Delta or American or United in first class or coach, I'm fine as well. I mean, but it is amazing. It's amazing the people who I run into, and I have these conversations where they literally are just judging and changing their lives, changing their relationships based upon what they're seeing somebody else do, and it's just it is mind-boggling.
Yes. Now, I'm not one to blame the devil on everything and say that he does everything, but I do think that there is a plot and a plan to steal the souls of people. And you can't enjoy your own soul if you're busy looking at someone else's. Am I a Christian enough like her? Am I a good politician like that person? Is my business flourishing? Everybody has different phases and places in life. I think when you look at a body, the foot is different from the head, but both necessary. You try losing one pinky toe, you can't walk straight. So there is value to all of us, no matter whether you are the person that works at the concession stand in the store or you're the person that owns it, because the person that owns it doesn't have a good business without employees. So we're all at different levels in our life, and it is okay. And I think once we don't know that because we're so busy looking at each other, because we're not comfortable in our own skin. You know, whether I'm making $1 bajillion or they didn't pay me anything to sing, there's still value because I have something to give. It doesn't lessen my assignment. It doesn't lessen my gift because someone couldn't afford to do what another church or another venue or event or theater could do. I still have an assignment, and I still have joy in doing that because my purpose is people, not pleasing people, but encouraging and uplifting and inspiring people and allowing people the freedom, giving them a pass to be fully themselves, no matter what their economic situation is.
You know, I had to have a real hardcore conversation with a young female journalist who called me, and she wanted some advice. And she's a general assignment reporter. And she said, you know, I'm thinking about becoming a traffic reporter. And I went, come again? And she happened to be citing another traffic reporter who has a significant following, more than 600,000 folks on Instagram. And so she talked about how when that was this incident and this young woman the story had gone viral, and she had been, you know, Chance the Rapper had tweeted her or posted, and Gabrielle Union or whatever. And she was talking about, you know, her huge following. And I said, do you understand a lot of Instagram is about TNA? And she was like, she's like, Roland. I said, no. I said, a traffic reporter. I said, do you know what a lot of people hire traffic reporters based upon? She's like, what? I said, their bodies.
Wow.
I said, you're literally, I said, what's the upward trajectory of a traffic reporter in their career? I said, what? New York, LA? I said, what is it? And I was trying to get her to understand that you literally are talking about changing the direction of your career because of somebody else has a lot of Instagram followers. And I can't tell you the number of conversations that I've had to have with journalists, women and men, who are so caught up in likes, retweets, and followers. And I'm going, focus on the work. Focus. Yes. I said, your worth is not based upon, I said, your following. It's the work. And in fact, the work is what's going to generate the larger following.
More work. Yeah, and more work for that matter. You know, when you are not looking at and it's hard, Roland, it is hard when you feel like you posted something amazing and wonderful and everybody's going to double tap this and you only get 2,000. Well, 2,000 is low for me. Or you only get 20 likes.
But here's the deal. Who cares?
Is it not good? Who cares? Who cares? If those few people are the people that you are impacting, you could literally be changing lives with those small numbers, small quote unquote. But it's still a whole life change by what you had to give or say or impart that can go much further than what social media ever could. If we get our eyes off the numbers, but really it speaks to insecurity.
Yep.
Really
yep.
it speaks to, I just want to be seen.
Yep.
I want to know that I'm not doing this for nothing. Am I valued? Does anybody care? Does it even really matter? And so that's how people feel.
And when you talk about when you post something or when you say something and you really don't know who that thing impacts. I remember when I was the founding editor of BlackAmericaWeb.com, and so when we started the site, there was no faith channel, and I said, well, we ain't gonna have no black website and not have a faith channel. And so I added that to it, and we added some daily devotionals and some other writings. And so I remember getting an email one day from this woman, and she said in the email, she said, you know, I listen to the Tom Jordan Morning Show every day, and I always hear about this website, and I've never gone to the website. And she said, but today I decided to go to the website. And she said, and then I saw this piece you wrote, which was on the Faith Channel. And she said, and it really, she says, and after reading it, I now realize that God has a purpose for my life. And I go, okay, but then I keep reading. And she says, what you don't understand is that I had already planned my suicide.
Wow.
She said, I knew when I was going to kill myself. I knew how I was going to do it. I had planned all these things out. And she said, but it was after reading what you wrote that I realized that there's a purpose. Now I tell people all the time that people go, oh my God, it's unbelievable. But I explain to them, though, that had I not written what God had placed in my spirit, and had I not created the place on the channel for that, when she listened on that day, she would not have had a place to go to actually read that. And to me, it wasn't my whole deal wasn't, oh, I needed those sort of emails every day. No, you write it, or you post it, or you say it, or you do it, not based upon how many people may respond, because you may just need one person who needs to see, read, or hear that thing on that day.
Absolutely. Changing one life is powerful stuff. Can you imagine when you hear the Oprahs of the world and these people talking about the one teacher that affected them, or the one day, the one moment, that meeting one person that changed their life? I remember when it was MySpace, and there was a young girl who used to follow me and Tina, and she was a paraplegic, and she came to our concert. She lived in Alaska. We had a concert there, and she came, and she said, I can't move my feet. I can't move my legs. I'm stuck in this chair. But when I hear my family play Shackles for me, I can tap my toe. That was everything for me. That wasn't 100,000 people, but that was one girl that was affected by the power in the music, the power in the words, the encouragement, the moving forward, the transformation from just hearing words that I sung and I wrote. That is life-changing. When you learn not to care a little bit, it'll help you and change your life. When you realize that this invisible group of people that we have deemed so powerful, and we have given them authority and place in our lives, so we almost can't live because what will they think? What will they say? They didn't call me. God called me. They didn't employ me. God put me here. And so, yes, I work with people, but I got a boss who put me in a position that nobody can change, even if they don't like my music. Listen, somebody is telling me off on my social media at least 3 or 4 times a day. Somewhere on Facebook, Instagram, I'm not, you didn't, you ain't, whatever. God bless them. It's fine. I know who I am and whose I am, so I'm not swayed by that. And I'm a lot tougher than people understand. I grew up in a real sarcastic family, so you could wake up and get dressed and somebody go, girl, I look stupid. So it doesn't shake my world. I go, oh, okay.
You know
what?
what?
I just say, oh, you think I'm stupid, but I think I'm awesome, and I just keep going with my life.
You know, so you have a couple of chapters. One is called "You Are Worthy." Another one said, "Know Yourself." And the reason what jumps out at me when I see that, I remember in my first marriage, we were at this event, and she was already there, and I had walked into the room. And when we got home, she had this attitude and was real bothered, and said to me, "You know what? Do you not know who those two guys were and how important they are? And you just walked into the room like you own it." And I said, "You're right. I was trained as how you walk into a room." I said, I was trained, and it's amazing to me when I hear people say, "Who do you think you are?" I said, "Look." I said, when I walk into a place, I walk like I belong there. I'm not walking in cowering. I'm not walking in, my head down. I said, no. I said, as a child of God, I'm walking in proud. I said, look, I'm going to speak to everybody. I ain't being bougie. I'm not ignoring people. But it is stunning to me the number of people who don't believe in themselves, who actually hate your level of confidence.
Wow.
Who then will say, well, you're arrogant or cocky and all of those things. And then you say, wait a minute, I'm not dissing anybody. I'm not hating on anybody. But you're mad literally because I believe in me.
Right.
And I love me and I like me.
Yeah. It's a problem when my confidence offends you, when my joy offends you. You really have to check yourself. Listen, a lot of times how people feel actually has nothing to do with me. I'm just the target for the day. And if you understand that, you don't get so moved and bothered by their anger, frustration, whether they want to write a long post on your page and tell you what they think about you.
But they crazy.
But when you know who you are, what you're supposed to know who you are.
I ain't never understood that. I like people go, why you always dancing? Because my legs work. And I feel like it. And I ain't need to ask your opinion if I feel like dancing.
I love you, Roland.
No, it's just, I really believe, because again, when I look at what you're writing here, I really believe, I just think that one of the greatest problems is that, let me phrase this right. I think people don't know how to be content and forward looking. Now let me explain that. I think people don't understand that. So here's just sort of I'll explain it this way. If I never ever do another celebrity interview, major political interview, then I am absolutely happy with what I have done in my career. But it doesn't mean that what I've done in my career is stopping me from continuing to pursue other goals. But if it never happens, if I never, quote, get bigger, if I never get larger, I am absolutely happy and ecstatic with what I've done. And I just think that's part of the problem, that people don't know how to be happy where they are right now.
Some people mourn their past successes. They feel bad because they go, oh, is that all I'm going to do? Is that all? Oh, God, that number one, how will I get it again? It's like for music artists, what they deal with on second records, or some movie stars, the second movie. Will it be as big as that? Right? I had a friend who just recently passed, and I remember when Mary Mary's second record came out, and the first single wasn't as big as Shackles. And I was devastated and nervous, and I didn't know what the label wanted to do. And she said, Erica, Shackles wasn't your beginning and your end. That's not going to be the last thing that you do. You're going to do many more great things. There ain't no way God put all that talent and beauty inside of you for it to be for one moment. But it was my job to keep pushing forward and not comparing tomorrow to yesterday.
But if you never have a song, again that as big as Shackles, and I'm gonna use Richard Roundtree told me this story because Richard Roundtree got upset because people kept calling him Shaft. And he was bothered. He's like, look, I've done other stuff. His daddy said, son, come here. He said, do you realize that there are people in this world who have been acting for years and have never been beloved? He said, the fact that you have one part that people to this day, 20 and 30 years later, still love you for, He said, you better appreciate that. And Richard Roundtree said, ever since his daddy checked him, he realized that his career wasn't defined by Shaft. He said, but I appreciate every person who comes up to me. And so if a song never, ever gets that height, the fact that it got that high is still what you should be joyous about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the way I feel when I hear artists minimize their biggest single, or artists who say, don't call me the name of that character. It is absurd, and it shows a level of ungratefulness. So you can be grateful for what was and still be in expectation of what is to come. And knowing how to be somewhere in the middle of that space allows you to plan and dream and think and grow. And that's the work that you have to do on your own soul. Because a lot of this happens, and it's a conversation that's just you. It's in here. Sometimes it's all what you are telling yourself. So if you don't learn to speak life to yourself about yourself,
there you go.
Then the negative voice will keep on bringing you down, and you'll smile and you'll be working and doing everything, but be depressed. You'll be smiling and working and successful and commit suicide. You'll be smiling and successful. And I always tell people, I never want to be a public success and a private failure. So if I feel away standing on the side of the stage because somebody else is killing it, I go, check your spirit, Erica. You are full and complete and have something amazing to give. You celebrate that person. Celebrate. Cheer them on. Matter of fact, get in the front row. Put your hands up in the air and scream for them. Don't allow that seed to grow, because it's a seed being planted. And sometimes you need to figure out, when did it get there and how can I uproot it? That causes me to compare myself and minimize somebody else because it's really what I want. That jealousy and that envy, that can be the root of all kinds of evil, and that will rob you of your joy. You have to do your soul work to figure out why you feel the way you do when you walk into a room. I know my power when I walk into a room.
You know what?
And I own it.
What was interesting as you were talking about that, I thought about for a second, and I've asked Jeffrey Osborne this, the OJs this, all the bunch of different artists. I always asked them. I said, have you ever encountered another artist who you were supposed to tour with or work with, but because you killed it, they were like, no, we ain't rolling together. And man, every single one of them has a story. And the thing for me that's amazing, why I like old school artists, because when you talk about Motown and the Chitlin circuit, or even before that, it would be 6, 7, 8, 10 acts on a bill. They might do 4 or 5 shows a day. And see, if you were the closer, but then somebody else all of a sudden killed it the last 2 or 3 shows, then they might start closing. But they fed off the competition. Yeah, it was competition. There was love, but they brought the best out. It is amazing to me how many stories I hear today of artists who are jealous and don't want, and like, well, that person was too good, so no, you can't be on my show. As opposed to, no. I want other people who are gonna bring it, who's gonna force me not to be lackadaisical and bring that thing again. But that's, to me, I think that's also that doubt and that sort of that fear and no. I need to be the best thing in the world. No. I want to compete against the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a 3-year anniversary concert in Brooklyn, New York at this big park, and I brought everybody out. BB Winans was there, all kind of art gospel artists, amazing singers, Leandria and Kiki, all these people were there. And I wanted them to be excellent. I didn't want them to be subpar. Because, and guess what? I didn't even realize I sang like one song. I was there to push and celebrate others. And I love doing that, especially because in my genre, the gospel genre is sometimes considered, oh, they just sing gospel. No, I sing for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I should be excellent at all times. People should come and leave changed and transformed. They should see something. It shouldn't be a regular church experience. And so when I see somebody get on stage and wear the place out, I'm cheering them on every step of the way. I don't feel jealous. I don't feel insecure. I don't feel any of that because I know nobody can be me but me. Even if you sing my song, you ain't gonna sing it like I would. And that's fine.
How do you give me an example of and you talk about in the book how you have kept what I call evil, spirit draining people out of your life? Because see, I know how I roll. Like they can't even talk to me. Like literally, don't even speak to me. I don't even want you touching me. You can't shake my hand.
I don't do that.
Well, because I mean, as somebody with discernment, I've literally met people, and I'm talking about the moment I meet them, like it's like, ooh, oh no, I mean, you feel it, feel it, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna be over here because there's some people that they are there to drain you.
Well, I got too much Holy Ghost and too much anointing for that. I'm too powerful, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way. I'm not confident in just me, but the God that lives inside of me is too powerful for me to encounter a devil and I shrink. The Bible says that demons tremble at the name of Jesus. If I never say the name, I still carry the power of the name. So if I walk in a room full of people who don't like me, you're going to like me and you're not going to understand why. Because God is living on the inside of me. And sometimes, depending on how troubled they are in their spirit, they just leave. I don't have to ask them to leave. They just leave. They don't want to talk to me. Well, I'm too busy talking about good things, and I'm too busy shining my light, and darkness and light don't ride together. The moment one light comes in the room, the darkness has to leave.
This actually happened. This actually happened, Eric. I was giving a speech in Portland, Oregon, and I flew in, I changed clothes in the office, and it was they had this reception. So, I mean, a pre-event reception. So I come out, you know, I'm speaking to people, I'm talking to people, you know, everything. And so then at one point they keep asking me, well, you know, we can go back into the room. I'm like, no, I'm good right here. So I'm just chatting with folks, you know, and taking photos. And there was a guy who was one of the folks who brought me in. And the moment I shook his hand, I literally, and I was kind of like, something ain't good here. But here's what was interesting. So I go back to the room. I wait. They bring me in. I tell them, when y'all want me to come out, they tell me, you know, you can come out at 7 o'clock. I'm like, okay, all right, y'all, up to y'all. So I come out. They doing the introduction. So I sit down and I'm speaking, and he on the front row on the right side. Baby, I'm feeling all of the evil sitting right here. Wow. I mean, just the look and everything. So. I go on in my speech, and I always use this rhetorical device by saying, you know, I talk about how I don't write speeches and how I allow the room to speak to me and whatever. And so I give the speech and everything like that. And when the event's over, he leaves. Now, all the people, they still there, but he's the organizer. So I get this nasty letter he sends to the Speakers Bureau, how I didn't talk to people, which is, everybody know that's a lie. All right. I ain't want to take pictures. We know that's a lie. And it was all this sort of stuff, and the Speakers Bureau said, well, how do you want to address it? I said, I'm not addressing that. I said, because I know it's a lie. A month later, I get another phone call. First of all, that brother had been accused of sexual harassment, had been in an investigation, got fired. They were doing the investigation, everything like that. And I was kind of like, And my office sent a little note to the Speakers Bureau. I'm like, I tried to tell y'all. I said, I sense, but the thing is, it was just all in his spirit. And I just sat there and said, boy, I ain't worried about you. But the reality is we encounter those people. Yes, and sometimes in our family.
I have a similar story. It was the Stellar Awards. They were praying for all the artists, and they were asking all the artists to come to the stage. There was a man that I had encountered in the hotel lobby that had a bad spirit. I mean, bad spirit. You could just feel it coming off of him. And so fast forward to the awards. It's the end of the night. Everybody's on stage. Me and Yolanda Adams and Kirk and Dietrich Haddon, all these people. And I see this man walking toward the stage, very slowly, very sinister. It's like, you don't know. I didn't know what he was going to do. I immediately started praying. And in my mind, I was going, not today, devil. Turn right back around. You're not welcome up here. You're not bringing whatever that is. When I tell you, Roland, the man stopped walking and sat down. We got power. We don't have to take what the enemy does. Now, sometimes there's purpose in that evil person being in the room to show you something about yourself, for them to encounter you, whatever the reason is. I'm not ever going to cower down because some demon or devil is sitting in my audience. I've had it many times. I had a girl walk down the center aisle telling me that I had been stalking her and that I was hacking her email. And I was like, babe, why do I want your email, darling? I don't, sweetheart.
I've had one of those.
Escort her out. I was like, y'all just pray for her, because clearly it's something going on.
Okay, I got to ask you this one here. You say there are lots of people who will challenge you over the years, and not all of them will come to you with respect and love. Some of the hardest situations might come from right inside your family.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I'm very candid about me and my sister's relationship. We have very different personalities. We operate differently, even though we've been side by side our whole life.
Right.
Born 2 days apart, married a year apart, had babies a year apart. Our sons, like everything. It was just, we've been in tandem our whole life. But when the shift started to change, I wanted her to be me. She wanted me to be her. So we would have a lot of unnecessary arguments. I mean, we would have an amazing concert, come off stage and argue with each other about, why did you say that like that? That was stupid. That sounds too young. That sounds too old. Like, it was just ridiculous. We learned to allow each other to be ourselves. Because I would leave a concert so stressed out, and I know my poor husband was sick of me talking about my sister. She need to do this, and I'm sick of it, and and why we need to dress different, and we need to do like we need more choreography, and we would just be going back and forth, and it was so much contention for so long. And when we both started going, that Mary show was really interesting. It did a lot, but it revealed a lot to us about us, and so we matured up and we grew up a little bit. And we decided to talk to each other and go, be fully who you are. And that's okay. You say what God puts in your heart, and that's okay. And because I'm all about redeeming relationships. I'm all about repairing relationships. There's a scripture that says, if you have an ought with your brother, leave the altar. So stop worshiping and praying and go get that straight.
All right.
Go apologize. Go ask, go repent, go figure it out. And we had to stop singing to apologize to each other, to nurture each other, to grow, and to ask the whys that we needed to ask, and to sometimes to just be there as we shed a tear or two with each other. And it has been so healing and so growing. And that's really what this book, More Than Pretty, is all about. It's growing. It's asking these questions. It's figuring out stuff. And why do I feel this way? Why did that make me so angry? Why does that make me so sad? Why won't I embrace this part of myself? Why am I so scared? And then come to your resolve and then own it and be the best version of yourself. I got to
ask you this here. You talk about in this chapter here, take care of yourself. You talk about your love of Cheetos, but then you talk about, am I sexy? And so I remember when, oh man, what was it? I remember because you came on my TV One show, but I remember when people were like,
it was the white dress.
What is wrong with her wearing that outfit? Oh, what? I mean, people lost their mind.
They did.
And it was like, do she not understand? We can see breasts and hips and butt, and people just lost it with you.
They did.
And in fact, Megan Good has talked about that. How she's being slammed. So, well, your husband's a pastor. How dare you? All of that.
I just want people to stop and just say to themselves, say it out loud, God made sex. So if I'm sexy, then I'm operating in the realm of something he created. Now, does everybody need to see everything? No. That picture that they were talking about, it was my curves. I had just had a baby, my last baby, and I had worked hard to look good, and I felt comfortable in my skin. And so I won't let anybody vilify. And I think that's the problem, especially in the body of Christ, and not just the Black church, but a lot of churches where you are told, don't do this, and sexy is offensive. And so you don't own your feminism and your power and this thing that God has placed inside of us because it's vilified and looked at as something as bad. It's like God created it, the enemy perverted it, and we let him have it. And so you tell these young church girls, don't do nothing, don't look at nobody. Like, come on, be realistic and honest. Now, we don't want them to have sex before marriage and, according to the word of God, but owning who you are and feeling comfortable in your skin, I think is necessary. And it speaks volumes to this young generation who would rather look at an R&B star, who would rather look at a TV show or maybe even watch porn because they think you're a prude and you don't know anything. And it's not about proving anything to them about how sexy or sexual you are. It is about understanding God's design and how beautiful and life-changing it can be and how necessary it is in relationship, in a committed relationship. That's why it brings so much insecurity when people are having sex outside of marriage, because there's no commitment and you don't know if you're being compared to the last girl or the last girls or the last boy, or you have no idea. But when there is this commitment, it's a beautiful thing. So I love that my daughter and the girls at my church see me as a beautiful, saved, but sexy woman. That's not a bad thing. Now, you're not gonna never see me showing everything, but you listen. My sexy is with me, and I don't shy away from that.
Hey, just the other day, Congressional Black Caucus Foundation prayer breakfast. Yolanda Adams saying, and I ran to somebody that night. They said, "Ooh, Lord, Yolanda Adams," and I knew they were not talking. They were not talking about her singing. I knew exactly what he was talking about.
Yes, yes.
I got a couple of questions. I got more questions I got to ask you. So, you talk about getting out of your comfort zone.
Yes,
And
new
and you
normals.
talk about touring with R&B folks. When I talked to Fred Hammond and I
Yes.
talked about this, and how so many people were mad at him when he put out, I think it was a love CD or it was a jazz CD.
Romance. It was a romance.
And people were like acting a fool. And Fred said, y'all need to understand, I am an artist. I want to use all of what's in me, and there's some stuff that's not going to be gospel. And you talk about how performing with other R&B artists actually help you grow and show you a different perspective.
Absolutely. So my pastor, I grew up in a church where secular music was a sin. You can't listen to no R&B except when they ask you to sing at a wedding. It's the most absurd thing. Don't listen to it, but I need you to learn Peabo Bryson and Here and Now because I want you to sing it in my wedding. Whole different subject. But my pastor said when I was invited to sing on the road with, I sang with Brandy, Brian McKnight, Eric Benet, did some stuff with Terry Ellis from En Vogue and Ray J back in the day. And my pastor was the one that said, I think there's something you're supposed to learn. Because I think he saw in me that there was something greater that I was supposed to do. And I love singing in church, but there was something greater that I had to do. And when I was out there, I did learn. I learned how they operated with the audience. I learned business. I learned, how to travel as a recording artist and certain things that come along with that. There was so much for me to learn. I learned a lot about myself because you have to be very disciplined when you are on the road because stuff is going to come at you from every which way. I had one girlfriend who told me, she said, Erica, just don't go to nobody's room at night, just period. Just don't go to nobody's room at night. And listen, I had been tempted. I remember I was singing with Brian McKnight, and there was a rapper that shall remain nameless that sat in the audience and stared me down the whole time. And it was somebody that I had a crush on. And so I had to look to the left and look to the right, and I was going, oh, God, Erica, After the concert, we were in the lobby, and everybody was going out to eat. And he looked at me and mouthed, don't go. I immediately grabbed the other background singer's hand, and I was like, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. He just told me, don't go. My mind went all kind of ways. But what I knew in my heart is, Erica, you a Christian. You a believer. You a church girl. One day you're going to be a big artist. I don't want to be singing in an audience of people and see him and go, I know what she like. I just didn't want that to be my story. And so I definitely left that hotel that night. I didn't stay there that night because I didn't want to put myself in the position to be on the phone and have to go, no, I'm not going to come by, no. I didn't want to lie to myself and say, well, I'll just come and we'll just kick it. We're just going to talk. I didn't want to even put myself in the position to be tempted in that way. But I learned a lot about myself. I learned that you can say no. I learned that you can make the right decision. You can make the right choice if you have discipline and you understand that your purpose is bigger than this moment. And I didn't even let the enemy tell me nobody will know. Nobody's here. Your church people ain't out here while you're on the road. I was there. God was there. And so I made the right decision for my soul. Not for my flesh, but for my soul. So, and I felt really good about that.
So last question. I ask every book author this when I interview them. And so when you're writing a book, whether you're researching or whatever, there's always what I call a wow moment where whether the author is writing or the researcher, and they go, wow.
Yes.
And so what was your wow moment in writing More Than Pretty?
So this book and this movement started from an experience I had at 16 years old. I was walking past a lady in church, and I heard her say, she's probably having sex. And I wasn't. And at 16, I was a girl who loved the leaders in my church. I had good girl syndrome. I wanted them to be pleased with me. I wanted them to like who I was and how I operated. And so I immediately went into low self-esteem and self-reflection and what's wrong with me, is something wrong. And so for years, I carried that. While I was writing this book and writing that story in this chapter, the Holy Spirit said to me, what if she wasn't talking to you? What if she was talking about somebody else? What if you have carried the pain of what that lady said to you because of how it made you feel and how she must have looked at you, and she wasn't even talking to you? And I let it go in that moment. I let go the possibility of somebody saying something about me. What if they ain't talking about you? What if what they're saying is a reflection of their own pain and has nothing to do with you? You don't have to own the negative things that people say about you. Very, very liberating. And that wow moment really, really blessed me. And I literally had to sit back and put the pen down like, Erica, what if she wasn't even talking to me? But she was, I mean, she was the messy usher, but what if she was talking about somebody else? And all this time, all these years, why would she say that to me? That was so mean. She sent me on a trajectory that made me blah, 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 blah. What if she... And so now I intentionally tell myself when somebody is on my page or somebody has the gall to come to me and say something, I go, that's not even a reflection of me. That whole statement was your own insecurity, and you're intimidated by my confidence and my success and my joy. And the enemy is trying to use you to bring me down, and I won't let you. I'm going to give you a hug, I'll sign an autograph, and I'll say thanks for following me, because clearly you do. Because if you have that many details about my life, you're a follower, and I appreciate it. God bless you. I hope you change.
The book is called More Than Pretty, Doing the Soul Work That Uncovers Your True Beauty by Erica Campbell. Erica, we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Roland.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Peace. All right, folks, as the marijuana momentum continues, our friends at marijuanastock.org have already reached more than half of their funding goal for the hemp CBD investment. That's right. If you want to take advantage of the great opportunity, you better do it real quick because it won't last much longer. If you don't know, I'm talking about the hemp plant, the good cousin to marijuana with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Also, if you don't know, hemp farming is now legal in the United States, creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. Now, folks, it's an opportunity for you to invest, and that's where 420 Real Estate comes in. The business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants. That's right, they're hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. As hemp continues to change the economic landscape, 420 Real Estate is allowing you to chase the American dream. Now, the best part is you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200. That's right, $200 up to 10 grand. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game, folks, and get in the game now.
Right. Bishop Kenneth Ulmer, glad to have you. Glad to see you.
Good to see you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I've seen you since the election.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We had an interesting time. You know what?
Very
I still have not seen the full debate. People keep hitting me up saying they only put like a clip, and I'm trying. Who do I reach to get it? Because
I'll find out.
Right, because people keep telling me, man, I heard y'all two got into it, and I would love to be able to share it with folks. Absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk first about where we are with the black church, but and it's not just the black church, but really what is happening on how here we are in 2019, and the total game has changed.
Right.
At one point, y'all bought the Forum in Inglewood. You have massive edifices, but the reality is, more and more pastors are going to smaller churches, smaller locations, multiple locations. So it used to be the people came to the church. Now the church is really going to where the people are.
Exactly. Which is a significant shift, but a necessary shift. Because I think with all of the social media and clicking and Facebooking and Instagram, and it's interesting because we're talking more, but we're communicating less. We have less relationships, although we have more talk. Right. And so I think there's an interesting desire for, and we're finding out in our own church, more of a desire for community, for relationships, you know, and I think that the day of at least the mega buildings. Right. And I have several friends who, when the cameras are not rolling, say I'd never do it again if I had another.
Oh no, I've actually talked to several pastors who said, I would not do this today. I would not, because now the pressure is you're trying to field 3,500, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 seats. Yeah.
Well, you know, if you've got, and I have friends like this, if you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 seats, and you've got 2,000 people is a lot of people. Right. But if you got 8,000 empty seats, that's a whole nother situation.
Well, but also I think that, and this is the thing that I think as somebody who's born and raised Catholic, left the Catholic Church when I was around 24, 25, and I've attended Baptist churches, Methodist churches, non-denominational churches. When you talk about community, I really believe that that's the one thing that a lot of churches are not focusing on, community/family. I was in the session, they were talking about the size doesn't matter, or something along those lines. And as I was listening to it, this is what I didn't hear someone actually say. I didn't hear them. They kept talking about members. But Ralph Douglas West, who was my pastor in Houston, he said, no, I focus on families.
That's good.
He said, if you focus on members, you can have people who are members and they're transient. He said, well, you want to attract families, and that's, I think, where also community and fellowship comes in.
Very significant. And it's interesting because nowadays, even in church business, finance, that kind of thing, back in the day, they'd say how many members you have. Now they want to know either how many families, giving units, or how many people show up. I mean, I know several guys who are still using numbers. Of course, most preachers count by twos. That's a whole other conversation. Yeah. But I have friends who are using numbers that on paper, you know, I never forget one time we were in the forum, as a matter of fact, and somebody, a reporter, someone asked about a mailing list, and my office sent out our database, 22,000 people. Well, I've never had 22,000 members in my life.
Right.
But those are names, and like Ralph said, those people may be there, they may not be there. So I think that the unit that counts is the individual who shows up and the family. And more there's a need for, and there's a shift for, how do we build, actually how do we rebuild our families, particularly the black family. And I think that the day of the black family is going to come back. I think it's coming, man. I think there are men, I think there are women, I think there are churches who are saying that's the gold mine. That's where the future lies. And certainly I get it with the millennials and the age thing, but more than the age issue, it's the unit issue and the unit of the family and the desire and the necessary need to put the focus there. And that's how you're going to change the community and change the neighborhood.
How have you tried, or how have you shifted your preaching or teaching based upon this being a different generational emphasis? Because previous generations, it was, you went to church, you likely went to Bible study, it did not matter, that's how you were raised. Now we're in a total transient world where folks say, I don't have to go on Sunday, because the reality is, I got 300 sermons on my iPod.
Right there.
I can literally pick up my computer and I can watch a church service at any time I want, at any moment I want. So I don't have to do that thing.
That's good. Which is interesting because in a sense that is anti-community or counter-community, in other words. I can do that in my home, and I have members who do that at their homes on their computer or whatever, and they don't come to the building. I have a friend whose online campus. I have a friend whose online campus raises more money than they do the people who come. I have a friend who raises $100,000 a week from people who don't even step foot in that building, which is interesting because on one hand you're saying people want community. On the other hand, they're watching your program, eating, drinking coffee in their pajamas.
But okay, so let's deal with that. So, if the church is advancing this idea of community, what that also now means is that preachers, board of trustees, church leaders are now going to have to understand the technology community. Yeah. So how do I create community? So in essence, if those folks are on there, so you have your Facebook, you have your YouTube, you have your Periscope, you have your Twitter, you have all these different social media. There was a Bible app. All of a sudden, I started getting these friends requests on the Bible app. And I'm like, well, hold up. I ain't download the Bible app. I said, I got friends requests over here. But the reality is, that's all the people who have the app. That's a community. And so the challenge now also is, okay, how do churches now think like technology companies to build communities online?
And that's what we have to learn. That's part of the shift we need to make. And I think to ignore that is to ignore the possibility of expanding the kingdom and reach. I taught a seminar on preaching about 2 months ago, and in that seminar I was saying to the young theologues, the young preachers, pulpiteers, I said, I am on my 5th preaching style. I was introduced in Chicago as an OG, so I guess I'm one of the old dogs now, And so, but I've shifted. I'm on my 5th style now. I mean, the things that people, guys who were my mentors, Spalding and Holland, it still works in some places, but the group that I'm trying to reach and the group that I'm called to reach, it's a different approach. Number one, it's a different content. It's a different approach. It's a different content.
Right.
I have to ask myself, how portable is what I'm saying.
Right.
How transferable is what I'm saying in this building going to help that person who joins us in worship every Sunday from London? How am I going to help that person? What am I doing here? Which means now there's got to be a different focus, because the original focus was come to the building, come hear my choir, come hear my preacher, come to the building. Which is interesting, because Jesus never said come, he said go.
Right, and that's the piece where I remember there were people who, I was one of the early adopters to social media, and all the number of people who what are you doing tweeting in church? And I said, I remember at the time, so I probably may have had 300,000 followers. Now I've got about 520 plus thousand just on Twitter.
Wow.
I got 1 million on Facebook. And I said, do you realize that when I send one tweet, I said, at that time, I said, it was going to more than 1 million people.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know who's watching social media in that tweet. I said, secondly, I take copious notes of sermons. I said, please tell me what's the difference between me writing my notes and literally sending out a stream of tweets, which is the exact same as writing my notes.
I love it. I love it.
It's the
I
same.
love it. And your notes are going further than that guy in that building.
And in fact, what I used to actually, I would type my notes in my notes section, and then as soon as church was over, I would immediately upload the whole sermon notes to my blog, which would then go out. Well, then I said, well, you know what, people are not necessarily going to read just the whole blog, so I just say, I'm just going to start just tweeting. And these people were getting all upset. Matter of fact, I was in a church, and the pastor got upset, and I had to check him. I'm like, do you understand that all these folks were seeing it? Now you bring in live streaming.
Right.
So now I can then say, if you want to watch the sermon, go here.
Josephine Baker's signature song was "The Times They Are A-Changin'." And then there's a passage in Scripture that talks about a tribe in Israel. And the most significant thing we know about that tribe is they had an understanding of the times. And if we, church, pastors, leaders, whatever, if we don't understand that these times are a-changin', this train will have left us. The people that we could help we'll never reach, because we don't know how to communicate it. We don't know how we don't know how to have a message that goes beyond these four walls. And if we don't, again, we're going to die on the vine. And some of the research, etc., is saying one of two things. They're saying church attendance is going down.
Right.
Others are saying it's the greatest time for the church ever. The church has the greatest opportunity. But it's not going to have the opportunity if it still operates the way it did down in Mississippi, and no problem in Mississippi.
Right, right. But in terms of in rural areas, down home.
It's a culture that has to change, man. And that culture inside the church must change in order to reach the culture outside the church.
How do you deal with people who say, okay, you said you're in fifth preaching style. How do you deal with people who say, no, but I need you to change what you talk about, because you have people who are single, who don't want to hear messages about shacking up.
Right.
You've got people who are gay and lesbian who do not want to hear certain passages of the Bible. You got people who say that those passages are wrong. You got people who say, oh no, women should be able to preach and teach. And so how do you ensure that how the world defines how the world views things, how do you ensure that, no, this is what has to be taught inside, not the world changes the church, but the church changes the world? How do you grapple with that?
You know, Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw. If you lift, I'll draw. So the church lives in this tension between lifting and drawing, and it will often have to make a choice. It will have to make a choice between it will lean too far to the lifting, the orthodoxy, the non-negotiable, whatever, on this side, to the point where it's not attracting anybody. And the church is going to die, the message is going to die, etc. On the other hand, if we flip way to the other side, then at some point we're going to be asking, well, what are we going to say? What are we going to say? So I think we have to live in that tension. I think the reality of where Scripture is and what Scripture says, it's like the message cannot change, but how do you change the message? How do you present that? How do I mean, this coming Sunday, I'm doing a thing on David, and I'm talking about how this great man was an adulterer, was a liar. What does God do with people who are adulterers? Whatever other term you want to use. So I can't talk this judgment without talking this grace.
Right.
I better get to the grace, or we all out of here, But so it's the tension that I live in of not either or, but both and.
Got it.
And that's tough sometimes. Tough calls sometimes, man. But it will always put me in that place. Now, which way am I going to lean? This way, or am I going to stay in the middle and try to do both? And sometimes you'll hit it, and sometimes you'll miss it.
Absolutely. Well, all the folks who watch do understand that when I'm in Los Angeles and I get there in time, that's the church I will drop by, because one, it also helps. They close to the airport.
Right in the airport.
So when it's like I can land, it's like, oh no, I'm not far at all from getting there in time.
But you know what? And this is not a pat on the back, but it is though. Your perspective of media, of journalism, etc. You walk that line, man, and it's a gift. It's a gift, and you and I know, because I'm on the outside. I know other journalists, etc., who are unapologetically on one side or the other, and I get that. But you have a unique gift of being the voice of Black America, not monolithically, but as complex as it is, as diverse as it is, and you're fair.
Appreciate it.
You're fair, man.
I appreciate it. Well, always good chatting with you.
Bless you, my brother.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Stay on the wall.
All right.
God bless you.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Mayor Landrieu, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
All right, good. So
Nice
you've
to see
been
you.
all over the place, and so I had to catch you here. You about to have your signing at Publix and Pros, and so I say, fine, we'll come meet you here, chat about the book.
Chased me all the way from Texas.
Yeah, no kidding. So it's interesting. There are a number of white Americans who literally go through their lives, and they may not have any experience with African Americans until they're 20, 25, because in terms of where folks live. I mean, you literally had to confront this issue of race from the beginning.
Well, as I write about in the book, I mean, from the moment I was born, I was in utero when my father, when he was 29 years old and a newly elected legislator, voted against Governor Davis's segregation package, and his life was threatened. And, I can't remember a time in my life when this was not part of who we were and constantly under, threat by, look, your political career is going to end or your physical life's going to end, all of those kind of things. And I write in the book a lot about experience that I had that informed actually some of the things I did when I was mayor. So in the book, when I was 13 years old, I was in high school. The priest came and got me out of class and said, I need to walk you over to basketball practice. I said, well, I've been called to the principal's office a lot of times.
Right.
But he ain't never walked me over to the gym. Why? He goes, because your life's been threatened. So I'm in the locker room, and my friends come running in saying, there's this white lady out there that says she's going to kill you. So we did what only teenagers would do. We ran outside.
Right.
To see her.
Let's see who this is.
So starts to dig in her purse, and my friends, being my friends, said, she's got a gun, and then ran. Left me there, and she threw a card at me and said, your father is an end lover, and you ruined the city because he let African Americans in it, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Mm-hmm. And from that moment, I mean, it's just been that way the entire time. And so I've confronted this in the legislature, and then as I became mayor, the issue continued to permeate, and it culminated in us deciding to take down the vestiges of racism, these Confederate monuments that reflected a truth that really was not the whole truth, right, or really any part of the truth about who we were.
So I'm reading the book, and I remember when it happened. I mean, we were talking about it on the show, and I remember the difficulty in terms of trying to find cranes. I didn't realize folks pouring stuff in the tank, setting stuff on fire. I mean the vitriol that you have to deal.
I have to say that I was a little bit naive about this. I thought, of course, after the murders in Charleston, when the folks in South Carolina took down the flag. Now, we did that in the late 60s. That, the country was ready to do this. Now, I knew the discussion was going to be difficult. I knew it was going to be hard, but there was an open process that we used, and I thought that once that process was finished, we were going to be good to go, and then we could physically go take them down. But that, of course, is not what happened. Everybody decided to throw down on this issue. They basically filed suit. There were 7 lawsuits. There were 13 judges. They tried to get the state legislature to stop us. They tried to get the president to stop us. After all of that finished, I then thought, okay, we're good to go. But that's not what happened. As soon as we started putting this out to bid, they got the name of the contractors and firebombed the guy's car. And then, without going through the whole story, we eventually found somebody to deliver a crane to us, and we started working on it. They tried to sabotage the crane. They flew drones. There were significant and immediate death threats that were sufficient enough for the FBI and our police officers to say, you got to do this at night because there's a real potent danger of particular gunfire. So it was really startling to me how hard the opposition fought and how much they really wanted to really illegally oppose what was now a formal government action. And I think that was really telling about where we are on the issue.
And these are the folks who are always talking about law and order.
Correct. Well, I don't know if it was exactly the same folks, but it was certainly the folks that kind of take the position that, look, and about the country. So I want to address this issue. A lot of these folks that said, no, we're gonna keep these up, you're burning down our history, were the same people that say you have to revere the United States of America, to which I had to politely remind them, well, the Confederacy sought to destroy the United States.
Yes.
And so why do we keep denying that? And why is it so hard across the country and in the South to say that, look, the Confederacy lost, they were on the wrong side of humanity, the Civil War was fought to destroy the country, not unite it, and it was fought to preserve slavery, because people still have this myth that maybe that's not why the Civil War was fought.
Look, you got the woman who's running in South Carolina for the Republican nomination for governor. She comes out and says that, oh no, my family wasn't fighting for slavery, they were fighting because of states' rights. And then, of course, some reporting was done that showed that her family was one of the largest slave owners in the state. Yeah. And if anybody actually read the actual secession document from South Carolina, it was abundantly clear why they were seceding.
This is an interesting thing, because some people who consider themselves to be people of good intent have a hard time recognizing a truth, because somehow even today they feel responsible for it or at fault for it. And of course, one of the things I say to white people today who had ancestors that fought in the war was, it wasn't your fault. You're not really responsible for what happened back then, but what you are responsible for now is, let's tell the truth about it, let's try to find a way to reconcile, and let's try to find a way to acknowledge that we have a lot of work to do going forward. And for some reason, people are having a hard time getting where they need to be. Now, this is clearly not everybody in the country, but there's certainly a group of people in this country that think, even though they don't live in New Orleans, they don't pay one tax, that they think somehow that they can tell New Orleans, that's majority African American, what to do with a piece of property they own, and they can't tell the difference between revering a cause and remembering a really bad thing that happened. And that the book talks about how to maybe walk through that a little bit and invites people into that conversation.
Well, I think the part of the problem is that, again, you have a problem, you have a situation where there was history and his story. And people, frankly, don't want to acknowledge that things were purposely left out of history books. Certain things were purposely left out. I mean, I've had these debates on television when they say, oh no, but these monuments went up right after the Civil War. No, they didn't. Correct. It was really to lock in during Jim Crow to say, oh no, you're going to remember.
Well, I'll make 2 historically accurate points about that. For example, we're about to celebrate our 300th anniversary in New Orleans, so thank you to the rest of the world for helping us stand back up and come home and celebrate with us. But of course, New Orleans was founded in 1718, right? But there were a whole lot of people there, like 1,000 years before, Iberville and Bienville ever showed up. Secondly, from 1718 until 1890, when these statues were put up, because as everybody remembers, the Civil War ended in 1865, that particular circle was named Tivoli Circle. It wasn't named Lee Circle. So the folks after the Civil War, well after it, took the circle and obliterated many, many, many years of history and put General Lee up. Now, they didn't put it up to honor General Lee. They put it up to revere the cause for what he fought and to send a clear message that was delivered really precisely to African Americans. And the reason you know it was delivered is because people like Louis Armstrong will say, Marion Wright Edelman will tell you today, that statute made me never want to come back to that city because it sent a message to me that I was not welcome. Now, if you think about this, Isabel Wilkerson wrote a book called The Warmth of Other Suns that chronicles the great diaspora, all of the African Americans and other whites of good conscience that left the South because of this exclusionary attitude. So how much have we lost across the entire southern corridor of the country,
Yes.
from Texas all the way over to Florida and all the way, you know, south of the Mason-Dixon line, of doctors, lawyers, poets, engineers that took their intellectual capital and went to
Yes.
New York and Chicago and Los Angeles.
I mean, look, Willie Brown's a native of Texas and went to San Francisco. Maynard Jackson, his family left Dallas and then went to Georgia. I mean,
Andrew Young left New Orleans and went to Atlanta. There's a reason. I tell people this all the time. I don't answer the question for them, but I ask them, why do you think in 1960 New Orleans was bigger than Atlanta and bigger than Houston, and then today Atlanta is really expanding, and so is Houston? They were multicultural. Atlanta particularly, which has led the nation in how you really believe that all of us coming together is better than us being separate, and that diversity is a strength, not a weakness. And if you invest in everybody and see their value, you're going to be better than if you're not. And of course, you know, like right now, and I started doing this before Trump was even thinking about running for president, but right now in the moment that we're in, the notion that diversity is a strength, not a weakness, is being challenged. And there are some people that are avowedly saying, I completely reject that, and I think that I'm stronger than you, and I'm better than you, and I'm bigger than you, so I win and you lose. And I don't think you agree, and I think a lot of people, that America is not a zero-sum game, that we really ought to judge people not on their race, not on their creed, not on their color, not on their national origin, or their country of origin, or their sexual orientation, that it ought to be judged based on your merit. And of course, this goes to the issue of police misconduct. It goes to the issue of criminal justice reform. It goes to the issue of immigration reform. How are we judging people? And if we judge them by their behavior, we're usually good. If we judge them by something else and second guess and assume they're going to be a certain way just because they're from a certain country or look a certain way, that's not really who the country is when we're at our best.
You talked about growing up and where you lived, and people said, oh, they live in a black neighborhood. and it is stunning to me the number of people who really don't understand how Jim Crow established our housing patterns today.
Correct.
And don't understand the impact that has had on schools, on businesses, on people of color, and folks go, oh no, but we can all live where we want to live, and you're going, no, you don't understand what that did and how that played a role in generational wealth, and with whites having $110,000 average wealth in America right now, blacks having $5,000. That's not just because black folks just keep spending. There are reasons why that happens.
Well, there are institutional reasons and legal reasons. So, for example, the monuments themselves, they just one of maybe 100, maybe there were more, of actions that were taken by the government to tell African Americans you weren't welcome. The one everybody knows about is you drink at this water fountain, I'll drink at this one. One of them is if you look at a white girl the wrong way, you got a problem. One of them also was that an African American family that was driving down the highway could not legally pass somebody driving in a car that was white. All of those things were all the kind of part of poison of the same, you know, the fruit of the same poisonous tree, where the message was you don't belong here. So the message was received. Now, we know it was received because of what happened after that. And so
don't belong here, even though you fought for the country.
Right. So think about this. We're in 2018. We're about to celebrate our 300th anniversary. The city of New Orleans has completely rebuilt itself with the largesse of the rest of the country, and great work by the people of New Orleans. And we have these Confederate monuments in a city that has always prided itself on our diversity. And they're sitting there like a sore thumb. And Winton says to me, hey, man, he said, hey, man, you need to think about taking those down. Well, my political brain went, oh, that's a fight. And he said, no, I need you to think about it from my perspective. And he checked me. And I grew up with Winton, but he even checked me, somebody that I thought was racially sensitive. And I thought, well, tell me why. And he said, do you know who put them up? Do you know why? Can you see those statues from my perspective? And when he told me about Louis Armstrong, it hit me right away. And I said, you know what? Let me go really look at this. And once I did, it became pretty clear to me as a guy whose job it is to protect not only the history of the city, to tell the whole history, the complete history, the thoughtful history, that everybody needed to be included, and to prepare ourselves for the future. And I know, just as a mayor, a little Indian scout that goes out around the world and looks at cities that are doing great, that the cities that are going to succeed, the communities that are going to survive, are cities that are open and welcoming and value everybody based on their talent and based on their merit, and is not judged by all those things. And so I don't want to say it was an easy call, it was a hard call, it was a complicated process, but I feel stronger today than I did actually when I started. This was absolutely the right thing to do, and I think history will judge it accordingly.
I remember when Bob Dole was running for president, and he kept talking about how America was when he grew up.
Right.
Reagan did the same thing. Donald Trump, same thing. And all of these folks in these rallies, yeah, we remember it. And I'm like going, what? We didn't have the same view. So there's this line in your book where you said, today I look back and doubt the black kids I knew had the same rosy view of the world. And it is amazing how folks don't quite understand that look, your time as a child could have been this and wonderful, and but it wasn't for Emmett Till. It wasn't for Medgar Evers, who served his nation with distinction and came back. It wasn't for the soldiers who literally were beaten at train stations in their uniforms by other white soldiers when they were just fighting the same enemy.
Correct. I'll address this too, and I'll write this in the book, about those of us in the South being able to hear dog whistles. And the Make America Great is something that everybody can aspire to. Let's make America great. It's the comma and again that gets everybody freaked out. And you go, well, okay, well, if you talk to any African American in the South, the first thing they say is, whoa, hold up. And if you're a thoughtful person, you go, well, hold up, like, why hold up? And they'll tell the same story that you just told, which is like, when is that again? And let me tell you about what it was like when I was there back then. So that's like listening to your daddy and Dr. Norman Francis and all these people. But in my life, and just in my life, I tell the story in the book that there's a pastor of one of the largest African-American churches. It's an evangelical church and Baptist church, and he went to Jesuit high school with me. He was raised as a Catholic, but then moved in that direction. And I asked him, I said, Pastor, because we're doing some work on criminal justice reform, I said, how was it we went to high school, white high school mostly, one of the few black kids there. I said, how was it a Jesuit for you? Did I miss something? Were they hostile to you? Were they hateful? He said, no, they weren't hostile or hateful. He said, but, he said, the thing that I remember the most is I never got invited over to anybody's house the entire 5 years I was there. Now, when he said that, I actually almost started crying because, you know what, I got invited over to people's houses all the time. And it never occurred to me that that wasn't happening with him too. So same kids, same school, same amount of time, completely different experience. And I could tell, even though he didn't tell me this, that even today, now he's a 54, 55, he was still pained by that, and that had a significant impact on his life. And it took a huge amount of courage and character of him not to be hateful and angry. So I tell white people, listen to me as a white man who you know that you grew up with, to tell you about the experience that you will not listen to from my African American friends. And the book is an invitation for them to kind of come our way. And if you point it out to them, I have some hope that people are beginning to listen. It is also important, though, to point out clearly that when David Duke raises his head and white supremacy raises his head, he needs to be slapped down by everybody in the country, Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. And this false equivocal of saying that somehow these guys are better and these guys, that's not right. You got to stand up on that. When the Klan steps out of the hood and steps out of the woods, you got to say, you know what, we're not going down that road anymore.
But even the example you used about your classmate, that also translates to corporate America and other spaces where we're not invited here, not invited there.
That's right.
So we're not part of the deal flow.
Correct.
It doesn't lead to opportunities. It doesn't lead to folks who invest in businesses, things along those lines. And so you have people who are smart and who are brilliant, who simply are being frozen out of quarters of power. And that has a direct translation into this inequality we have.
I think it's really true. I mean, everybody knows this. If you don't access to information, access to friends, access to people, that is not only at the office, but is after, you know, when folks go wherever they go or on weekends or go out to vacation. If there's not real interaction and integration, then you lose the opportunity to see an opportunity. You know, everybody that's hustling, you know, for work, you kind of, where's an opportunity for me? How am I going to get it? And a lot of these things just come up in casual relationships. And if the only time you're seeing each other is at work, and by the way, even at work, there are only a couple of people, not a lot of people, the ability to create some kind of secure future and build generational wealth is really hard. So then Katrina hits, right? And all of a sudden people don't have generational wealth, they don't have title, they're in houses that got passed down from brother and sister and aunt and uncle like we do in big families, and all of a sudden the federal government says, I'm only reimbursing you if you show me title to the property. All of a sudden you're like, okay, well wait, you can't say that this isn't related to a whole bunch of other stuff. So the country's got to get smarter and better at this if we want to be better. And the bigger message to white folks is this, and I've said this many times, it's going to get me in trouble, but everybody's nervous about 2040 because that's when the country is going to be majority minority. And I have said, based on my experience with people that I've grown up with and known, that African American people and brown people are going to be much nicer to us than we were to them. And by the way, if you see it as a zero-sum game, you got a much better chance of losing than if we start to really work together and build, you know, these relationships where we all will succeed. And I just think we got to get there.
See, and I keep saying on these television appearances, and I know the white executives are not happy when I do it, but I say, I'm sorry. What we are having to deal with today is white fear. There's fear of, oh my God, what's happening, losing culture, what about opportunities? And I'm going, look, you have to confront the reality that America is changing.
Correct.
You are not turning any clock back.
Correct. But Roland, if I might, here would be a suggestion about how to go forward. And I write this in the book about just how you do this. Like the 6 most important words in the English language happen to be I am sorry, but then the other ones have to come, which is I forgive you. Now, to the whites who said, well, I don't want to say I'm sorry. I said, well, we can't have the conversation until we recognize that something bad happened.
Or someone says, why do you keep bringing that up? You should forget that.
But we can't go forward if the other side says, well, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire like you were the one who was there. We've got to get to, it's going to be okay, you guys. We're going to work together. There's an open hand here, as opposed to, as you know, as folks said, a clenched fist. And so the book is really, it's not a judgment. It is, here's the truth. Let me give it to you as I know it and I believe it to be. Let me show you what the pathway forward looks like. And it seems to me that we just got to state clearly, the Confederacy was on the wrong side of history. It was fought to destroy the country, and it was fought to preserve slavery. And thank God the Confederacy lost, number one. And secondly, just very basic principle, that diversity is a strength in our country, not a weakness. And if we really work towards that, eventually we will make the progress, because as John Lewis has reminded us, there has been a lot of progress that's made, as President Obama has reminded us, but we also have to say, well, we got a long way to go. And it's obvious that sometimes people want to turn the clock back. We're having that moment right now, and we just got to say, you know what, we're not going back that way. And if that's worth the fight, then we have to have an uncomfortable conversation about it.
We've got folks who are running for president. We know who they're running for president. We've got individuals who are saying, Mitch, look, you're playing identity politics. I keep saying, no. Identity politics is a BS phrase that was created to push the buttons of certain people. The reality is, this is not a group thing. This is an American thing.
Correct. Well, for example, America, what are we about? If you want to celebrate our country, you celebrate people who try to bring our country together, not people that tried to separate it. That's what the Confederacy did. That is what Robert E. Lee did. That's what Jefferson Davis did. These are not my words. I mean, this is what they said they did. That's first of all. Secondly, it is particularly American to judge people based on merit, not who they were born to or whether they came from a certain country. I mean, we are like everybody has hope and opportunity. We all come to the table of democracy as equal. What's more American than that? And so when people have to confront things that we did in the past because it was painful for us, we recognize it's hard, but we can do this together. I just want to tell you, everything's going to be all right. But we have to be respectful of each other, and we have to see each other. And by the way, this is true across races. White people are not the only people that are racist in America. And racism doesn't just happen in America. The whole point is that when people are in pain, when they're cold, when they're hot, when they're hurting, when they're poor, when they feel like they're at risk, they can be turned against each other, and they can be encouraged to not see the common bonds that we all have. And I just think America's better when we figure out that, you know, when we work with each other, it's all going to work out all right.
Last question. So I've kidded you about running for president. So I'm not going to ask you the question, will you run, will you consider it? But I'll ask you this. What would you say to the candidates who are going to run, who are thinking about running, how they must address this and deal with it? Because, you know, many of them will operate like when Winton came to you.
Yeah.
Look, man, that's the last thing I want to touch. I don't want to go there, but You got Trump sitting there with no button he's pushing.
Yeah.
It's sitting right there. What would you advise a candidate running for president when it comes to this issue?
Well, of course, now I'm 30 years into government, and I have governed in New Orleans with, I think, a sense of doing what I think is right for the right reason. And I think it's worked very, very well. And I would just speak to the truth. I would try to be authentic about it. And I would not run away from problems. I would run to the most difficult problems. Americans are much tougher than we give people credit for. And although we've been through a bad patch in the last couple of years, I always kind of remain hopeful. You see it with these kids at Parkland, man. They're tearing it up. And they're speaking truth to power. And they're really kind of getting after people and making them think again about the level of violence and the culture of violence that we have in all of its iterations. And the people of America can change. They can get better. Just like, look, my mother, who is a saint, told me not to take the statues down. But after I did it and she read the book, she came to me and said, I never knew this. They never taught me this. I didn't understand. And you could see her transforming. And Dr. King completely showed us that. I mean, the power of transformative love. And I just think that we got to kind of stay the course, do the hard thing, and we'll get where we need to go.
All right, then.
Thank you.
Mayor Landrieu, we appreciate
Don't
it.
mess with Texas.
Never.
Thank you, Roland.
Appreciate it.
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
This is Diala Riddle, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay woke.
This is Director X, the director of Superfly on the red carpet, or the black carpet, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Yo, what up, y'all? This is Jay Ellis, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I'm Lex Scott Davis, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
You Want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.